Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, Buckeye edition. Today, we are going to be talking about the Ohio State football Buckeyes and their game against Purdue that happened this past Saturday, previewing the biggest game of the year for OSU right now against Michigan State this Saturday, talking about the college football playoff rankings that happened about an hour or so ago. So we have the captain, Mr. Byron Mitchell. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing excellent, sir. How are you?
I am doing well. Man, we played Purdue this Saturday. As an experienced Buckeye fan, you know you always have to be wary of Purdue. If you are a true Buckeye fan, you know what this team has proven every odd so couple years. They've beaten us more recently than Michigan has. They've caused us more headache. But this time, Ohio State did not take them lightly, as Purdue already has two top three wins. Yeah. So, Byron, Ohio State came up top 59-31. I'll let you take it from here.
Ohio State looked dominant throughout the entire game. CJ Stroud had a bounce-back game after his performance against Nebraska. Against Purdue, he went 31 for 38. 361 yards, 5 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Maya Williams had a monster game, 14 carries for 117 yards, no touchdowns. Travion Henderson had 13 carries for 98 yards and 2 touchdowns. Garrett Wilson actually had a run. Yeah, 1 carry for 51 yards for a touchdown. Jackson Smith and Jigba did amazing again, 9 receptions, 139 yards, a touchdown. Garrett Wilson, 10 receptions, 126 yards, 3 touchdowns. And Chris Olave, 9 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. So offense was clicking. Defense did well, even though A.J. O'Connell, the Purdue quarterback, threw 40 for 52 attempts, 390 yards, and 4 touchdowns. They really didn't have a run game. They had about 91 yards rushing. And we kept David Bell in check, even though he had 11 receptions for 103 yards, but he didn't have a touchdown this game.
Byron, I first want to start off with Garrett Wilson, because Garrett Wilson did not play in that game last week against Nebraska. He comes in this game, and just like you already said, his stats were phenomenal.
I think they say he was like the first wide receiver to have a touchdown, or 3 touchdowns and a rushing touchdown in a game for Ohio State.
It's crazy. Like, his stats are just phenomenal. Buckeyes, it was 7-7, and then Purdue's defense is not good. Once we started scoring, they couldn't keep up. And it just like they still scored 31 points, but you look at OSU scoring 21 in the first, 24 in the second, 7 in the third, 7 in the fourth. By halftime, the game was over. And it's like when the offense is turning like that, that's the team that a lot of people are saying that we have a shot in obviously making the playoff and then potentially winning the college football playoff.
Yeah. I believe if our offense is clicking like they have in this game and some other games, I think we can go far.
I also want to say too, with like just the offense going and going, our defense. We could have won by 30, but Aiden O'Connell, the dude had 4 touchdowns, no picks.
Yeah, he did a phenomenal job too. I know qualms against him. Just our defense stepped up when they needed to step up.
Right, I agree with that. And let's just talk about him now. CJ Stroud, you already went over his stats, and it's kind of crazy because, Byron, we're always going to say this until the end of the season. But CJ Stroud, again, won Big Ten Freshman of the Week. I do have to say he is now 20 years old. His birthday was October 3rd. So we cannot just call him. He was a 19-year-old when it started, though, obviously. And now, from all those people who were ready to bench him and all of that, CJ Stroud now, according to FanDuel Sportsbook is now the favorite to win the Heisman Trophy.
Look at that. Who told you guys to relax that, the then 19-year-old would grow into this thing and be a great Buckeye quarterback? And now look at him. I think I had his stats put up for the year. So for the year so far, he is 214 for 311, 3,036 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. That is impressive for a freshman quarterback.
Oh, yeah. I mean, just think of it from this way, too. Like, no one was, CJ stuff really dropped. Now this is according to FanDuel Sportsbook. And of course, there's a whole bunch of betting odds, but he's ahead of Bryce Young, ahead of Kenneth Walker. Currently, Stroud's odds is 125. Bryce Young's 250. Kenneth Walker's plus 450. Travion Henderson plus 5,000. Obviously, you already went over Stroud's stats. 31 for 38, 361, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Stroud, who everyone says cannot throw, remember that, is currently ranked. He's number 5 in the country of passing efficiency, number 6 in passing yards a game, and is tied for 3rd in passing touchdowns per game. This is the same guy they wanted bench.
Yeah.
And didn't want him to have time to develop and didn't realize that, hey, starting under the lights, Big Ten on the road, it's kind of shaky when it's your first time start. Playing Oregon, who's we'll get in the playoffs a little bit later, who's currently ahead of Ohio State. It gets shaky. But now just look at that.
Yeah, bad games happen to everybody. Like, not one quarterback can just have a perfect season. Everyone's going to have a bad game every once in a while.
I also want to say with this, too, if Stroud does keep this pace, and he does get at least invited to New York next year, I don't even know if this has ever happened before. Someone's going to have to really check me on this and the history of college football. He would be the 3rd straight OSU quarterback to be invited for the Heisman ceremony.
Yep. Dwayne Haskins and then Justin Fields. Hopefully CJ Stroud, fingers crossed. But that's an impressive list of Heisman invitees from OSU. And
this was 3 straight quarterbacks. If you do remember, Chase Young actually got invited for the Heisman as well.
Yes.
So this is just 3 straight quarterbacks. I don't know if any school has really done that. But man, it's just with the hater. Like, there was a lot of OSU fans, which I don't know, man. It was really finicky. I know I wasn't a fan of people saying bench him after like 2 games. I know you weren't a fan. I know Cedric, who was on our pod, wasn't really a fan, like dude's 19. And now look at him being the Heisman favorite. If he goes on and actually wins the Heisman Trophy, what do these fans do? What do they say? They're going to be like, oh, yeah, he's a Buckeye. We're so happy. But y'all were claiming for him to be on the bench.
Yeah, you can't really say anything. Like, if he wins a Heisman, which, again, I hope he does, like, the haters can't say anything.
Like, I want to know. I want to know what they say. I want to know what do the other quarterbacks do? Because if CJ Stroud wins the Heisman, then he's not going to not start until he leaves to go professionally or graduates. So what does Quinn Ewers do? Just sitting there on the bench, because he's going to be on the bench as long as CJ Stroud's there. Jack Sawyer, he's the one who got suspended, right? For the DUI?
Yeah, Jack Miller,
I'm sorry. Yeah. So this is just a wild turn of events. How we went from people were already talking about him. Was it the Nebraska game? He had 2 picks, and those were his first picks in 4 games. So oh, we got to bench him again. Or you could type in CJ Stroud needs bench right now on the internet. Like, I hate to say it, but CJ Stroud needs to be benched after his 3rd game, because it wasn't the game after Oregon that did it. It was the game after Oregon where we were not looking dominant. They're like, we need to bench him. To now Heisman Trophy favorite.
You'll have to see it.
But before we go into the Heisman, before we go into the playoffs, Byron, I just want to say on the Heisman, because I told you this Monday we were hanging out, like talking, previewing our stuff. I think this game actually is going to decide who wins the Heisman Trophy. Potentially.
CJ Stroud versus a excellent Kenneth Walker, the 3rd.
Who Kenneth is currently 3rd on fan Sportsbook.
He's had an impressive season so far. 227 carries, 1,473 yards, and 17 rushing touchdowns. That is impressive.
Yeah. And the reason I say that this will probably decide it, my opinion, is Kenneth Walker already has the Heisman moment. He had 5 touchdowns against the top 10 ranked Michigan when they were both in the top 10. Like, that's already the top Heisman moment of the year. If CJ Stroud, let's say he replicates this same stats, right? 31 for 38, 361, 5 touchdowns, no pick. In a top 7 matchup, where now it's round robin these last 2 games. Whoever loses these Big Ten East games, you're not going to the playoff. You're not going to the Big Ten championship.
Correct.
That's his defining moment, because I feel like CJ doesn't have that. He doesn't have the big win against a big team at the top of their rank, because we lost to Oregon. This is number 4 versus 7. Stroud wins this, and then he beats Michigan. I think he's going to win the Heisman Trophy, which is a huge turn of events, because, Byron, we've talked about this for weeks now. We have not had a front runner.
No, at the beginning of this season, everyone's Heisman favorite was Spencer Rattler. He has not proven himself to be a Heisman candidate. He got benched in favor for Caleb Williams, who then got benched in favor for Spencer Rattler. Wild turn of events at Oklahoma. But CJ Stroud, definitely after the Purdue game, is a Heisman front runner. Now, if he can, like you said, if he can replicate against Michigan State and Michigan, who both will be top 10 opponents, hopefully Michigan will win this weekend. And they'll be both top 10 opponents. And if he can have amazing games, I think he wins the Heisman, just like you said.
I do too, because just like you said, it started off with preseason Spencer Rattler and DJ from Clemson, who both got benched, who both had they both got benched. Then you had Bryce Young, which I really don't know where the Bryce Young thing came from, maybe because he was quarterback at Alabama, whatever. But he came and just like, eh. And then CJ's coming, came out of nowhere. I thought the quarterback who took over Spencer Rattler's position, I thought he was going to win, because if they would have benched Spencer, saved them from Texas, kept them undefeated, and snuck it to the playoffs, I thought he was going to win, but they just lost to Baylor, so I think he's done. And Spencer came in. So right now, I really think CJ's in the driver's seat. I think this would be one of the craziest stories in college football history.
I remember, and it was way before the season started, there was I forgot who had said it on Twitter, but CJ Stroud was like number 5 in the Heisman race. Now, at the beginning of the season, to go from number 5 to number 1 is absolutely insane. He's had a great season for a freshman.
Especially when people wanted him benched. That's the thing. People wanted him benched.
Yeah, after that, with the Oregon game and then Akron, I think he had subpar games. They're like, oh, bench CJ. We're like, just relax. It'll get better. Because I think people were so used to just OSU quarterback just coming in.
It was the Tulsa game. Tulsa was actually a game until the 4th quarter. Akron would be 59-7.
Right. Thank you for correction. But I think people are so used to OSU quarterbacks who had Dwayne Haskins, Justin Fields, JT Barrett just coming in and having amazing seasons. They're not used to a slow start to a Ohio State quarterback. So I think CJ Stroud just having that slow start rub people the wrong way, but you got to let people grow into this thing.
Yeah, I agree. So it's crazy to see. Before we go to the playoffs, Byron, man, this is Michigan State game. We got game day.
Yes.
We might get game day. Actually, potentially, we could have game day 2 weeks in a row. They're coming. It's going to be at the Horseshoe. It's Ohio State, Michigan State. We talked about how Purdue, your seasoned Buckeye fan, causes issues. Michigan State causes issues. Michigan State's a school who beat Urban Meyer twice. Well, he was a Buckeye. So this is, and they've had some squads, Kirk Cousins, Le'Veon, all of them. They got a squad now. I mean, if you do the top 5 receivers in the Big Ten, we have, I want to say we definitely have 3. Yeah, we have 3 out of the 5. One's in Penn State, another's in Michigan State. So their pass defense is bad. That offense, they got a good quarterback. They got a great wide receiver, and we already know about Kenneth Walker III. Byron, man, how do we win this game? And And do we win this game?
I think how to win this game. I think we have to keep Kenneth Walker, the third, in check. We cannot allow him to go off because we can see what he does when he's allowed to go off against that Michigan defense. Yeah, 5 touchdowns, I think like 197 rushing yards. And they're a top 10 defense. I think they're actually number 1 defense in the Big Ten. So if he can go off against Michigan, I'm a little afraid to see what he does against us. But like I said, if we can keep him in check, not let him have those explosive runs that he had against Michigan, I think we will win. And then we also need to get pressure on Peyton Thorne because he's not having a bad season either. He's threw for 2,460 yards, 21 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. So he's not having a bad season either. But I think if we can put pressure on Peyton Thorne and keep Kenneth Walker in check, I think we'll win the game.
Yeah, because when I was talking about receivers, obviously Jaden Reed, he's a top 5 receiver in the Big Ten, 45 catches, almost 829 yards, averaging 18.4 a catch, 7 touchdowns. That's their big 3. My concern, Byron, is that Kenneth Walker is probably the best running back we've played. He will be the best running back we play, but he's also the best one since Muhammad Ibrahim. And even though that was the first game of the season, Ibrahim was tearing us up.
Yeah, he had a great game against us.
And
I think he ended up having like 168 yards and a touchdown.
And he left in the third quarter. And we've even said if he played the full game, we might have already had an L.
Oh, yeah. I definitely think if he had to play that full game, our run defense was not equipped to go against him that first game.
My solace with this game is it's in Columbus. Like, the crowd's going to be juiced. I mean, game days, their camp is going to be going wild. They're going to be up from 5. They're going to be pumped for this game because we know it's a stake. It's truly now if we lose, we're done from a playoff perspective. If Michigan State loses, they're done from a playoff perspective. If Michigan loses, they're done from a playoff perspective. So this is it for the Big Ten East. Is next 2 weeks.
Yes, this next 2 weeks will decide who comes out the Big Ten East. If we win out these last 2 games, we'll win. If Michigan State beats us this weekend, they'll get in. And if we beat Michigan State but lose to Michigan will get in. Yep. So this is a very close race. Basically win, and you're in the Big Ten championship game.
Byron, man, what score are you going with this game?
The spread is 19.
I feel like that's I don't know where these high spreads are coming. I know we covered this past game, but the past 2 we did not cover.
That's true. I think it'll be. I'm gonna say it's gonna be a 10-point game. I'm gonna say 34-24 Ohio State.
I was actually going 1 point above you on both, 35-25.
Okay.
I was going to go 45-35, but if Michigan's getting 35, I feel like that's not good. So
right.
But we'll see how they play, man, because last time when we were in the same scenario, when we just came off a national championship game, Michigan only lost once too. And Michigan State muddied that game up. That was in Columbus at night, and we lost that, and then we didn't go to the playoffs because Michigan State won the Big Ten. So are they going to try and play ball control with Ennis? Like, this is going to be so – are we going to be quick strike, like boom, boom? But like it's going to be interesting, man. I don't think they could cover all of our wide receivers.
Oh, they definitely can't cover all 3. They're going to have to double team one, but then, like, who do you double team?
Yep, I agree. And Michigan State's coach, they should have already mailed him Coach of the Year. That shouldn't even be a question. Because no one expected Michigan State was picked to finish last in the Big Ten East.
Right. Because last year, even though it was a COVID year, they went, I believe, 2-5, and this year now
they beat Michigan last year.
They beat Michigan last year, yep. And then this year they're 9-1, the number 7 team. So definitely a bounce back year from last year. So I think Mel Tucker should win Coach of the Year.
Oh yeah, it's not even close. Not even close. Not at all. All right, Byron, you know how we end it. Playoffs. we're just going to focus on the top 10. The top 7 remained unchanged. Georgia 1, Alabama 2, Oregon 3, Ohio State 4, Cincinnati 5, Michigan 6, Michigan State 7, Notre Dame 8. They went up. Oklahoma State 9, Wake Forest 10. Oklahoma dropped to 13 because they lost to Baylor. Baylor is now at 11.
Mm-hmm.
Texas A&M 7-3. They're 16. They're really gonna make that. They're like, oh, we lost. They lost. Alabama lost to Texas A&M, so they're really gonna keep that going. Arkansas 7-3, just in the SEC teams. But yeah, man. So you weren't expecting any changes in the top 7 because that's what really matters right now. The top 7.
Yes. I was just intrigued to see outside of the top 7 who the next 3 were, because with that Oklahoma loss, I want to see how far they would fall, and with Baylor winning, how high they would rank them. So I think it fits, that Oklahoma dropped to 13. Baylor, I would have liked to see Baylor in the top 10, but Wake Forest is stuck back into the top 10. So Big 12 championship, it looks like if Oklahoma State wins out, and if Baylor wins out, they'll probably face each other in the Big 12 championship.
That's going to be crazy because if they both went out, which I don't even know if I'd say they will, because we were talking about Baylor, then they lost to freaking TCU.
True.
If Oklahoma State wins out, it's going to be a 1-loss Big 12 team champion. Beat Baylor. Oklahoma State already played Oklahoma, did they?
Let me check, because
they still have that game.
I feel like they play that game when we play last week when we play Michigan.
Oh, for rivalry week.
Yep, they will play them on the 27th at 7:30.
Okay. So there's still. So depending on where Oklahoma is, I mean, they could sneak in. I think they obviously jump Notre Dame because Notre Dame, they're best eights where the best of they're at. Michigan State, Michigan lose, they jump them. That already puts them like at 6. The problem is, I don't see them jumping Ohio State or Oregon. They might even jump Cincinnati, to be honest. But that'd put them at 5 if they're trying to get in. The problem is, though, which we are all hoping. The only people who are not hoping for this are people in Tuscaloosa and big SEC wallets, is that Georgia beats Alabama. That is where we are at right now. Georgia has to beat Alabama to give Cincinnati, Oklahoma State, and those other teams a chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that big the SEC championship is looking like a huge game for playoff implications, because if Alabama wins, they're getting in. So it would be 2 SEC teams, and then whoever wins their championship game between Oregon, Ohio State. Well, if we make it, hypothetically, if we make it to the Big Ten championship. So this last month of football is about to be insane.
That's what sucks about these playoffs, because it always comes down to that SEC championship game. You usually have like an undefeated team or a 1-loss team, and you're praying that the undefeated team beats the 1-loss team, because then if the 1-loss team beats the undefeated team, they're both getting in.
That is true, and we don't want to see that again.
Because if Alabama beats Georgia, they might just flip-flop them. Alabama 1, Georgia 2.
I mean, they probably will. They probably will.
And then we got Oregon and Ohio State. They're keeping Oregon ahead of Ohio State because they beat us head-to-head, which I
get that. But what also doesn't make sense is that Michigan State beat Michigan, and they have Michigan at 6. So they say, oh, head-to-head matter in the Oregon-Ohio State. But then head-to-head doesn't matter in the Michigan State. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, because they're like, oh, yeah, we beat because Michigan State literally lost the week after, which we called. We said could happen. So
we did.
I mean, it's interesting, man, because let's just Ohio State. I can make the case of Ohio State Michigan and Michigan State back to back. They should jump Oregon because they have more quality wins. But if they're going to keep that head to head with them, then whatever. I just feel like obviously if we go undefeated, win the Big Ten championship, the rest of the way we're going to be it. If we lose, we're not. Oregon, they're so finicky, man, because you never know with them. Now it's looking if Oregon goes all the way, they're going to be it.
If Oregon goes all the way, they'll be in.
It's that number 2 spot, man.
It's that number 2 spot. What the playoff committee was saying today is that potentially Oregon could lose to Utah.
They could.
Because they play them this weekend, and I think they would play them again in the Pac-12 championship.
I wouldn't be surprised if they lost to Utah. I wouldn't. Now, if they lose, then hell's going to break loose. Because then you're expecting Alabama to lose to Georgia. But if Oregon loses, that's going to open up 2 spots.
If Oregon loses, that'll open 2 spots. If Alabama loses, that'll open a spot. So I'm looking at the Oregon-Utah game. Utah is actually a 3-point favorite.
Is it in Utah?
It's in Utah.
Do you have a time?
That is the night game.
Oh, no. Oh, no. In Utah, it's a night game?
Yep, ABC, 7:30.
For them, that's really not good. That's not good. That crowd is going to be juiced.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep my eye on this game.
7:30 that Saturday. I don't have anything. Oh yeah, I'll be. Oh, that's not good. Oh. There's some scenarios there that if Oregon loses and we win, we go up to 3. Cincinnati would have to go up to 4.
They would have to.
Michigan State would drop probably right to like 10. That means Michigan go to 5. Then you have Notre Dame and Oklahoma State. Oh man, that's problematic for.
That is problematic for Oregon.
For them. They got to win. Well, obviously they have to win, but that's all right. We definitely have to pay attention to that game. Byron, man, anything else?
I don't think we'll have. So the big games this weekend are, of course, OSU and Michigan State. Now, Oregon and Utah. I have to think if there's any other big games that have playoff implication.
I think you could just say anyone in the top 7 has a big game because they can't lose.
That's true.
Like now it's at the point where every game they can't lose. It's too late in the season to lose and catch up.
Alabama, Arkansas, number 2 versus 21.
Arkansas they had their fun one. They're not what they
Nah. Yeah, I think those are the two biggest.
Yeah, it's on OSU, Michigan State, and Oregon and Utah. That's what it is.
Yeah, because Georgia plays a cake school. No offense to Charleston Southern, but
yeah, you'll love it how they do the SEC scheduling.
Right. It's not bad, but it looks bad at the end. Like, why are you playing these cake school when everyone else is playing a tough opponent in their conference?
Well, their defense. Their defense is that they play like the whole SEC thing. So they're playing inside conference is hard enough. And before we do go, I do want to say that Florida is the worst team in America. I can't believe what I saw, that they gave up 56 points to Sanford.
56 points to Sanford. I was not expecting that at all because, Florida's supposed to be a great school.
They're the worst team. Worst team in America.
Yeah, they have not proven themselves to be a great SEC team.
The only person who could say they might be worse than them is Texas because they lost to Kansas. They're terrible too, and they're going to the SEC. Good. Okay, that's bad. That's so bad.
Yeah, I don't know why Texas or Oklahoma wants to go to the SEC. Like I think we said this at the beginning. Our first college football playoff. Like, if you're Oklahoma, you're more than likely going to win the Big 12 almost every year.
Mm-hmm.
So why you want to go to the SECs? I know it's probably for money and all that, but SEC, you're gonna get lost in the shuffle. You have Georgia, Alabama, LSU. Sometimes LSU's having a bad year. That's probably like the top 3 in the SEC. One of you are going to have to face Alabama every year.
Yep.
One of you's going to have to face Georgia every year.
My thing is, if you can't beat Kansas, and you're going to the SEC, like it's idiot. Yeah, you're going from whatever the exposure, but what exposure are you going to be having when you're going 2-12 every year?
Right.
Can't even beat freaking Kansas. That's embarrassing.
Kansas. Right. Giving up 52 to San. Well, yeah.
They're terrible. Well, that's all we got to say.
They're terrible.
Byron, anything else?
Go Bucks. Stay focused this weekend. It's a do or die. You got to win out.
Well, with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. Big game, noon, OSU, Michigan State, ABC. Game day will be in Columbus for that. Don't know who the celebrity guest picker is, but we'll be watching. And with that being said, as the captain said, go Bucks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.